Hello, everyone, and welcome back to True Words Aren't Beautiful. And I'm giving you a bit of an update on some reflections I've had the past week. And to let you know, since I have been withdrawing a bit, I have been doing well because I have been following my process. And that is the theme of today's video, which is getting lost in the process, observing processes, goals, and aspirations. So let me start with something I've mentioned in a much earlier video about something I used to do back when I was a university student at UCLA. Yes, hard to believe, but I did go to UCLA. So, a number of friends of mine used to get together and read philosophy before we would go to the John Wooden Center and lift weights at the gym. We would often read a lot of books on Stoicism and some work by Nietzsche. Marcus Aurelius, great Stoic philosopher, and also Sprach Zarathustra from Nietzsche. One particular line I really enjoyed was that your body has more wisdom in it than any dogma. And that dogma doesn't have to be religion. It can be the current scientific paradigm, which is treated like dogma, especially when that dogma might actually be incorrect. And an example of a scientific dogma would be Lysenkoism, a form of politics penetrating science, where actual science and facts are ignored in favor of a more politically oriented ideology from the Soviet scientist Lysenko, where through sheer force of will and through odd ideas about genetics, they felt that they could master nature through Marxist communist ideology. And we know that is not true because it led to famines in both the Soviet Union and the People's Republic of China historically. So, getting back to my point about how your body has more wisdom, this is where it's great to have the marriage of the mind and the body in whatever you do. A kind of yogic union where there is no separation between the intellect and the emotions. That's why we call it the heart mind, as opposed to the intellectual mind. And when you expand your understanding of the mind, the body itself is part of the mind, not separate from the mind, and also an expression and extension of the mind. So, we would visualize, based off of the advice of Arnold Schwarzenegger's 1970s fitness books, we would look in the mirror and we would visualize the kind of bodies we wanted. And then we would take that a step further and visualize the lives we wanted to live, what we wanted to do with those bodies, why we wanted to be fit. We visualized how we would look. And we thought about ideas that would inspire us. That was my go-to idea. And there are other people, like a friend who is more Christian, who talked about this one quote, I believe it was 1 Corinthians 9:25, about how when you master your body, you become a master of the universe. Something like that. I have not read the Bible in a while, but it's something we also used in cross-country when I went to an international school, and our cross-country instructor was a practicing Christian. So we all came in with these ideas. We would discuss, we would compare, we'd go pump iron, we would get on the cycling machines, run on the treadmill or the ellipticals, and we would imagine ourselves to be like Batman or Bane, where we would be intelligent, we would have strong brains, strong minds, and we would also be fit, strong bodies. So, as they say on TV tropes, that is the trope known as the genius bruiser. Not to say that we were geniuses for getting into UCLA, but we like to believe we were. So, on the subject of values and qualities, let me talk first, briefly divert to a couple of encounters I've had the past week. First was with a young lady whom I met at my cafe because she approached my adorable dogs again, like many people who do. And today, where I met one of my favorite artists who performs for my favorite musical band whatsoever, and they just happen to be a Filipino rock band known as Sugar Hiccup. I will include a link to their music and their channel in the description later. But just to tell you about how much they influenced me. So as you recall, one of the things I've shared before was how I had a very low opinion of people and this country, and I couldn't wait to leave because of my experience with being taken to the Philippines involuntarily as a teenager and being raised here as a high school student who didn't get a choice or any understanding. I was just told that I was going to be here for a vacation. And yet, when I was introduced to the artists and to the natural beauty of this country, I did a 180 with my view on everything here. And Sugar Hiccup is one of the precursors to that legacy, where when I found out that the West does not have this hegemony on beauty and nature or art, it was from their haunting and penetrating music that got me thinking. For over 27 years, I've been a fan of their music. So, just to give you an example, my most suicidal days in high school, college, and bad breakups a decade ago, and last year when I first started this vlog. At every point in time, they are one of the few artists whose music I would turn to, that I would find solace in. When I couldn't meditate, when I couldn't even get up to do a single push-up, the easiest thing I could do was listen to the music that moved me. And reminiscent of a book title I saw about chronic dysthymia disorder, something I was once diagnosed with in high school. The title of the book was, I Want to Kill Myself, but I Also Want to Eat Duck Bogey. And it talks about how you can be functional and seemingly okay, but inside you're hemorrhaging. And that's been me many times until I discovered my own process and I maintain my aspirations through this consistent process. And I achieve goals effortlessly through the process and aspirations. So, their music, when I was alone in a desert in the Peace Corps in Tanzania, I would listen to it. When I was getting to know girls in college, I would share Sugar Hiccup's music with them and let them know exactly how I felt when I wanted to close my eyes and be taken to another place. In high school, on Friday nights, when us international school kids, whether you're 13, even 12, or you're 18, you could go to any bar and they would take your money and you could drink. You could act like a college freshman, acting recklessly while you're still going through puberty, and that was common. And we were protected by our expat privilege or by some people's social-political status. But most of all, it was greed and money, because those establishments didn't care, they just took our money. So all those kids were doing that, and I was never really a fan of that lifestyle, but I partook in it. In here and there I did that because I wanted to fit in, and of course wanted to meet nice girls. Other times I would just go to Tower Records, buy an album, go to the bookstore, buy a book, go home, close the door, turn off the lights, turn on the air conditioner, ask myself what the hell was I doing in Manila? Why can't I ever go back home to the US? And I would just listen to that CD, but then around midnight, I would turn on the radio, I would listen to the local rock station, NU 107, and I would wait for the music of Sugar Hiccup to play, especially the songs Who Tease and Womb. That was my solace. Those songs just connected to me. Now, imagine how I felt in 2015 when I first moved back to the Philippines from East Africa, cutting my Peace Corps service and training early. And for the first time, I got to meet some of my idols when they did a reunion tour in 2015. and I talked to the singer, Melody, and I told her how much their music meant to me. And then, when I finally got back on social media last year, and I followed their page, the other week I talked to one of their musicians, Xandro, and I told him exactly the same thing. And this morning I met him and we had a nice conversation talking about the beauty of art, the creative process, and how everything just comes from that primordial creative flow. And it validated a lot of things that I've been reading, it validated a lot of thoughts I've been having and reflections in my meditation, and it validated these past few days since I've taken a bit of a withdrawal, a retreat from unnecessary interactions with people, especially on social media, or from dealing with some students and clients who can be a bit aggravating at times. So let me now go into the next part where I talk about a young lady whom I met, who watched some of my videos after we met, and she told me one particular story in my videos about how I was a guy who could climb Russia's Mount Elbrus, one of the 7 summits. And yet, there was a point in my life where I hated living in this one place, climbing up 4 flights of stairs because there was no elevator. And how I thought, why is it that I can climb mountains, but I complain about the inconvenience of climbing up flights of stairs on a regular basis, when I should have that fitness, I should have that stamina and resilience, and yet it upsets me. And she could relate because even if she herself is a fitness enthusiast, as she identifies, why are there times that she still gets aggravated when she finds out that a lift isn't working and she has to take the stairs? Or why is it that I can think of a girl who is a yoga instructor, and when I first meet her, she's angry, she's swearing, she's smoking and kicking chairs, just being very aggressive and difficult to be around. And then in within half an hour of meeting her, she runs off to talk about mindfulness, breathing and stretching and yoga and chanting Om. And I just found that to be a bit of a juxtaposition. But when I look at my own situation, speaking for myself, I would have to see that as a kind of compartmentalization, particularly from my Western mind, where one of the things that prevents me from exercising is thinking about the process of doing an hour or so of training, how difficult it is, how I'm not in the mood, having to drag myself out of bed, feeling lazy, then traveling back and forth, paying for gym membership, all this kind of stuff, and then just saying, I don't want to do this. Or when I do this, I'm tired and I don't have time to do other things. That compartmentalization. When I get a routine, a gym routine, something I used to have back in college, when I had it, and then I would complain about having to walk from Hitch Suites, where I lived in UCLA, all the way to Royce Hall for a lecture, and back, up and down the hills of UCLA. I liked being fit, but I also hated having to wake up and walk to class. And if I had a bike, I still hated it. That was my own programming, the incorrect thought process, which wanted to work out only when I was going to work out, and study only when I was going to study, but not need to have extra physical effort just to get to class. The lazy mind, the compartmentalization. And then compare that to yogic union, yoking together different wisdoms and disciplines to do something that is effortless. And that's kind of how I've been training over the years, how I've been taught, where right now you can't see me, but I am training my legs from half lotus posture, or I have the soles of my feet pressed together and I'm pressing down on my knees to open up my groin and my hips more, create more flexibility. And I do that without realizing it sometimes, or doing different stretches or different exercises, from contracting or fascia work when I'm walking, or my breathing. Everything you do just becomes second nature when you have qualities and aspirations. And those habits come not from compartmentalization, but bringing everything together. Now granted, while it's nice to have this union of everything where it's effortless and you don't think about it, there are times when you do need to compartmentalize. For example, let's say the elevator, I know I called it lift earlier, but this is just me inadvertently code switching because of my notes. You have nice clothes, you have a meeting, and it's 8 flights of stairs you have to go up, and you're sweaty on a hot summer day. Well, if you're wearing makeup, your eyeliner gets ruined. If you sweat a lot, like me, you look like you're soaking by the time you go up those 8 flights of stairs, and you don't look very presentable before the people you're trying to leave a good impression on, whether it's your colleagues, your students, or a job interview. So, it's not that I don't like fitness or I don't like physical effort. It's just that my mindset is not ready for exertion. My mindset is on work and presentation. And while I can physically handle it, it's the inconvenience that bothers me. So all that fitness is not meant to eliminate the inconvenience of what my priority is in that moment, which is presentability, as opposed to being able to physically handle the ultimately small challenge of walking up 8 flights of stairs. So let me talk to you about a process and the yogic union, beginning first with comparing combat styles to martial arts to martial yoga. So how I like to differentiate the three and how we do all of them and none of them with what I do. Combat styles are what teach you how to fight. Martial arts teaches you to fight for something. Martial yoga teaches you problem solving, creating peace, achieving a state of awareness, wisdom, and understanding from the martial framework. That is martial yoga. And from the martial framework, it's from our exercises, our lifestyle, our qualities, and our values. So let's differentiate then after this quote, one that I've referred to many times. When you reach the top of the mountain, keep climbing. So if you have a goal, which is to climb to the top of a mountain, say my goal is to reach Mount Pulag. Once I've climbed it, it doesn't mean my work is over. It means that I will look for another mountain to climb, another one to challenge me. Or if your goal is to work out 5 days a week, hit your weight loss goals after a few months, or muscle gain goals, you have to ask yourself, when you achieve your goals, why is it, as scientifically proven, the sense of achievement is so fleeting? You feel happy for maybe 5 minutes, but then you're miserable because you feel like you have to do more. What you visualized is not what you have. And that's why you work on the process, because once you check off boxes and achieve your goals, you inadvertently either give up your goals or you realize you have to keep on climbing and striving. So let me differentiate that with a fitness and health framework. Let's say your goal is to work out and be fit, but then your aspiration, as you expand, is having good health and being able to do many physical activities, as was mine. And then I had other friends whose aspirations were aesthetics instead of health. So when I once asked a friend who's a gym rat, how does he validate his fitness program? Is he willing to go climb mountains with me? Is he willing to compete in a marathon or a triathlon or a strongman competition? And he said, no, I just want to look good in the mirror. I have big muscles and I have a big chest, he said. I'm happy with that, and I never skip leg day. And that's fine. He's being honest himself. He's not trying to fight. He's not trying to have many physically demanding outdoor activities. He just wants to look good. So, it's important to differentiate what your aspirations are. And when you have your aspirations, that is how you focus on your process. And when your process is good, your goals are not overwhelming, your goals are not pie in the sky and distant. Your goals are benchmarks. You achieve a goal, you move on, get to the next goal, and go on, and suddenly goals mean very little in the long run. It's your aspiration which keeps you in a constant process. Because I know people who have the goal of being fit and healthy in college, but by the time they got married, that goal went out the window because their aspiration wasn't there. They didn't clearly define their aspiration, which is to be fit and healthy. Their aspiration was really to look sexy and to look strong and show off to girls or guys, but once they got the guy or the girl, they didn't care. And then in their 40s, they reawaken that because again the aspiration becomes, I just want to look sexy, I want to feel good, I don't want to be tired all the time. And that's fine. So when you have that aspiration, you start with small goals that become bigger goals, such as getting to the gym 3 times a week or doing HIIT workouts or doing yoga 3 times a week. That's fine. And eventually you expand those goals, you meet those landmarks, benchmarks, whatever you want to call it, and you maintain your process. Now, someone complained to me once that, no, sometimes you get lost in the process and you lose yourself, so I'm just going to do what I want and be happy with that. And my counter to her is, no. You don't get lost in the process. You actually don't have your process clearly defined. You don't have your aspirations. You have a nebulous goal where you want to be happy, you want to be better, but you haven't defined that or written out your aspirations. You have this vague idea of what the goal is in order to achieve those aspirations. And you don't have your process. So if you don't have your aspirations, you can't have clear goals. And if you don't have clear goals, you won't know how to figure out your process. And if you don't have a good process, your process becomes muddled and jumbled, and you're changing it because you're trying to achieve the goal already. Going back to an earlier analogy from a previous video, when a friend was trying to figure out how to win the game and how to find winning strategies and hack the game, I told him, hey, you need to learn how to play the game first. Learn the rules. Learn the rules, win, lose a few times, and then work on strategies. Because you're not just studying the rules, you're studying yourself when you look at how you play and your process of learning how to play. So everything requires a process. So let me talk a little bit about my own process right now and my aspirations. So the reason I step back is, yeah, of course, I still have my emotional attachment to my ex, Dana. I still have a lot of hurt there. But I also know that it's unrealistic to expect that everything will fall into place or we will magically reunite, because it has to be a mutual thing. So while I can wish upon stars and toss coins into wishing wells, if another person does not share that dream and aspiration, then it's wishful thinking. That's all it is. And when I look at myself, really, I just want to be better, I want to be happier, I want to heal, I want to have clarity, I want to have transformation. But if I narrow that down, the best way I can describe that according to my own metaphysical worldview is I want to embrace Buddha nature, emptiness and being free, as opposed to, well, being stuck in egoic nature, the one that feels lack, the one that has all these types of frustrations and emotions and pain, suffering and trauma, stuck in this illusory reality that we created. So part of my aspirations are, I want every morning before I meditate, I ask for this, to be able to have the knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and skills to be able to embrace my Buddha nature over my egoic nature and to express that to others, speaking to their Buddha nature and inspiring their Buddha nature. But at the same time, having the patience, faith, trust, compassion, kindness, openness, acceptance, grace, and humor to navigate those struggling with egoic nature, whether it be other people or myself. So with that aspiration, that is something that I work on every day. My process in order to embrace that Buddha nature, good information, going back to the gym memory, I read good things, I expose myself to good ideas and good people, good habits, developing qualities. Your habits and your actions are an expression of those qualities. If you're constantly around angry and hateful people, such as on Twitter, talking about politics and society, if you're talking about how men are the enemy with fourth wave girl boss feminists, or how women are the enemy when you are red pill incels, how immigrants are the enemy when you are ultranationalists, you're exposing yourself to bad ideas and bad people, and those lead to bad habits. So I read good books. I will link some of those books on Buddhism, Daoism, Zen, and yoga and Hinduism in the description, because every morning I read these before I meditate and have my aspirations. I focus on those ideas. I journal them every night. Well, not every night, but when I can. I talk about them with people I meet. I talk about them in this vlog. I try to embody those ideals. So my goal, I don't know how to recognize my goal of Buddha nature aside from this. Am I happy? Am I at peace? Are the people I interact with uplifted by my presence? Do I get triggered when someone wants to argue or someone disagrees with me? Do I get annoyed when someone says something very strange, such as talking about how there is no genocide in Tibet, or how they talk about how the West Philippine Sea belongs to China? Strange ideas. Instead of arguing because no one ever convinced someone to agree with them by arguing, I listen. I consider their ideas, but that doesn't mean I accept them. I don't accept the ideas, but I accept the people. I understand they're following their programming. I understand they don't realize they're following their programming. I realize they don't have the same tools, support, and mind or body experiences and values that I have. They don't have my process or my aspirations or goals. One person's goal may be to make me feel like garbage and win an argument with me, to belittle me, because I don't agree with their politics. And I say, okay, cool. You want to argue, you want to insult me? You can do that. But it's my choice to decide if I'm going to feed them, if I'm going to give them the satisfaction of being offended and being upset by whatever they do. So, by following this process, this daily process, my aspirations of embracing Buddha nature over egoic nature, that goal is fulfilled when I do my rites, my morning rites, my practices, my exercises, my meditations, my art. And as expressed through my interaction with people, if I'm not getting upset, then I've achieved my goal. Even if I don't have someone to challenge me, I've achieved my goal. But I enjoy being challenged. I enjoy being provoked now, because it allows me to test how much have I developed, how much patience and tolerance do I have, how much openness, understanding, and acceptance do I have now. Do I need to argue to win? Do I need to convince them they're wrong? Do I need to say, hey, you're imposing on me? Hey, that's factually incorrect. Or, hey, you're wrong, I'm right. When I can just say, cool, I've won. And they've won. They get to vent, they get to hear their own voice, and no one has to suffer. And there's no animosity. So, That's my process. That's my aspiration. That's my goal. I achieve that all the time. Translating that to other things. If you understand why you do what you're doing, and you have goals to recognize your progress and to validate the correct process, then you won't feel lost or stuck. When I was suicidal before, I felt stuck because I never felt like I could achieve any goals. I felt like everything was a failure. My goal was to get into a good college and graduate from a good college and get a good job. I graduated from UCLA, yes. I got good jobs, but I never felt satisfaction. So I achieved my goals, but I did not define what my aspiration was and why those goals fit into those aspirations. And when it comes down to it, those aspirations were, I wanted to be validated. I wanted to never have to worry about stability. I wanted to be contributing. I wanted to be intelligent. I didn't want to be seen as dumb. But those are low aspirations. So, my aspiration now, instead of saying, hey, I'm smarter than you because I went to UCLA, I'm smarter than you because I did some grad school. No. My aspiration when it comes to education is to continue to learn, to continue to understand and explore. That's why I keep reading, as opposed to many people who said, oh, I haven't read a book since I finished my AP English class in high school. Or in my high school, my IB English classes. So, in case you're wondering what IB stands for before I go on, it's International Baccalaureate, as opposed to American Advanced Placement or British A-levels. So, that's my aspiration of education and being educated. And learning. My goals, in order to achieve that aspiration, is to continue reading and continue being exposed to information and good information, considering stuff that may not be so good and discerning whether it's worth keeping or entertaining it. Obviously, I'm not going to read Holocaust denial literature. I'm not going to read doomsday mindset-inducing news. So, I will continue to read and not pretend that I'm smart. That is how I don't act like an intellectual or pseudo-intellectual douchebag like so many people are now. Or so many people say, look at me, I have a master's degree, I'm so smart, SMRT. Or people who say, oh, I'm smarter than you because I didn't waste my time getting indoctrinated at a Marxist institution passing itself off as a school. And I just say, why is everyone celebrating stupidity? Why is everyone celebrating paying someone to validate them or failing to take part in that game? Education is not defined by the degree or certificate you have, even if many of us in the East like to believe that where you went to school decides everything. And while this is still true socially, unfortunately, I've run into people who've gone to Ivy League schools, including a guy who went to Columbia, who would say things like, oh, well, I went to Korea for 2 weeks, my wife is Korean, and I know more about Korea than you. Koreans don't eat kimchi. So, yeah, that's just the way Koreans are. Koreans don't like kimchi. Or, oh yeah, Chinese movies, martial arts movies, they copied Star Wars. All those fights and movies like Hero, yeah, that's just imitating lightsaber duels. And I'm just thinking, right, American cinema influences Chinese cinema and Japanese cinema, where they have their own sword fighting choreography based off their own martial styles for years, which in turn influenced the Jedi in Star Wars and the Daoist influence on the Force philosophy. So just because you went to Columbia doesn't mean you're smart. Just because you have a PhD or a master's degree doesn't mean you're smart. And just because you read good books and you can win arguments with people who are certificate waivers doesn't mean you're still smart, because you're still arguing. Like the namesake of my channel, True words aren't beautiful. Beautiful words aren't true. Those who argue don't know. Those who don't argue know. And what I do know from arguing is it's a waste of time. When I hear someone saying something like, oh, the national language in the Philippines is Spanish, I say, maybe in the past, yeah. No, it's still Spanish. I say, why do you think it's Spanish? Well, it's right next to Mexico, isn't it? I just say, I'm not going to argue. I'm just going to say, you're right. Not going to bother to correct him, because obviously he's not willing to look at the map, and I don't think he knows where Mexico, let alone New York, actually is. So, aspirations, goals, and process. Continuing the process of reading, continuing the process of meditating, continuing the process of fitness, continuing the process of doing my guitar work or my drawing, continuing the process of being better. That aspiration never ends. When you understand what the aspirations are, what the goals are, and what the processes are, it will never be an unachievable goal. You will effortlessly achieve goals. And that is what we're aiming at. And that's why, even if I say I plan to withdraw until the end of August, early September, I allow myself the openness to finish early. I allow myself the openness to entertain things that disturb my withdrawal, because sometimes it is worth it to break from your process. Step back, re-examine if the time frame you gave is enough or more than enough. Anyway, thank you for your time. I will see you in the next video.